I think I know the answer based on what you just said, but does it concern you at all that the former president has now for months been laying the groundwork of potentially challenging the election results if it doesn't really go in his favor?
It's predictable. This is what he does, I mean, there was absolutely no question in 2020 that he'd lost. He had lost. It was clear. And he claimed that he won, and he's got, tens of millions of supporters who believe in him. And so they say, well, okay, then it was stolen. But it's not true. And no, I think that, that he's already done this before, claimed that elections were stolen, and if he loses this time, I'm pretty confident that he will do it again and that he will incite violence. So that's the nature of Donald Trump.
Do you think there's going to be potentially, if he loses, another January 6th type event then?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happened in my party, the Republican Party, is that it's become pretty much of a personality cult, and so people view Donald Trump as their champion, and I understand that. But it's gotten to the point where they not only view him as their champion, but they view him as somebody who can't go wrong, and so whatever he says goes as far as they're concerned. So if he claims that he was cheated or that the election was stolen, there are a lot of people who then believe that the election was stolen. And it's a very short step from that belief to the sort of thing that happened on January 6th. So do I think that there is a potential for violence again this time? Yeah, I think that there is, depending on the outcome.
In this election, as we are gearing up to Election Day, Democrats and some Republicans have called Donald Trump a threat to democracy. Some Republicans say, hey, that's hyperbolic, that statement's a little overblown. What do you think?
Well, I think the obligation of anybody in public life, and in fact, the obligation of all citizens, is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. Anybody who has ever held a public job takes an oath to do just that, support and defend the Constitution. Every member of the bar, lawyers, take that same oath. But I think that even without taking that oath, it's kind of understood as a responsibility of citizenship that we support and defend the Constitution. And an attack on the legitimacy of elections, an unfounded attack on the legitimacy of elections, is an attack on the Constitution. It's an attack on the peaceful transfer of power, the legitimacy of a presidency, the legitimacy of court decisions where there has been litigation on the subject. So it really does violence to the Constitution and to the country. The Declaration of Independence says that our country is derived from the consent of the people. Well, when you undermine the consent of the people, you do real damage to the country and to the Constitution. So I think that back in 2020, Trump did real damage to America. And in my mind, nobody has done more damage to the country because he's riled up tens of thousands of people who think that our system is wrong and that the peaceful transfer of power should not occur. And if he does that again after the next election, I guess it depends on who wins, but if he does it again after the next election, he has doubled the amount of damage that he's caused.
That's a big statement. No person you think has done more damage to the country than Donald Trump. So, from the lens of looking at the Constitution, trying to preserve the Constitution, what is your pitch then, as a Republican, to other lifelong Republicans when it comes to this election?
Well, I just personally, I've never supported Donald Trump, and I won't now. I've not gone so far as to endorse his opponent because I am a Republican. And to me, it was a terrible choice in this election. But I believe that no matter what happens in the election, we, the people, have to stand for our country and for our Constitution and for truth, and not for what we hope would be the result of an election, but we have to stand for truth. And when we say okay, defend the Constitution, well, let's defend it, and we better be ready to do it.
Another lifelong Republican, former Congresswoman Liz Cheney, she took that a step further, is endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris, has been on different campaign stops with her. Do you think that moves the needle at all? What do you think of that? Because you're saying, hey, I'm not endorsing a Democrat, but I'm not standing with this Republican.
Well, along with a number of other people who have been lifelong Republicans and served in various Republican offices, we started an organization last spring, and the name of the organization is Our Republican Legacy. And the reason for the organization is to keep alive the traditional principles of the Republican Party. And they include respect for the Constitution and the rule of law, as well as a strong national defense and reliable alliances and fiscal responsibility and so on, to just focus on those principles, not on individuals, not on particular campaigns, but on those principles. But the belief is that the country deserves a responsible conservative party. And historically, that has been the Republican Party. We have been responsible, we have been conservative. But the MAGA iteration of the party is not just different from that, it's the opposite of that. So we want to keep the flame burning, keep the ember burning of what the Republican Party has been and the great contribution that it's made to our country historically. We want to revive that. We want to bring it back. And so in order to do that, in my view, my best contribution I could make is not to endorse Harris, but to just reiterate what I believe. I am a Republican. I believe in the Republican Party. I don't agree with the direction that Harris would lead the country. But I also believe that the principles that have defined the Republican Party and been unanimously agreed to by Republicans for many decades and now been thrown overboard, those principles have to be kept alive, and that the vehicle for keeping them alive is the Republican Party.